great feast for everybody tonight. So without further ado, let's give a round of applause for Narada Muni.
Okay, Hare Krishna. So nice to see such a filled room. I'm just firstly praying for all of you to be kind enough upon me to be attentive. When everyone is attentive and inquiring more, it actually furthers me to speak better. I'm actually not very qualified, nor am I some incredible public speaker like a TED Talk or something. And for those of you who are here for the first time, I don't get a second chance at making a first impression, so please forgive me if I fail at doing it properly. I promise you I'm trying to be at least a good person, as we all are. And so that can tie into this topic. Some of you have probably seen this before. I've given this presentation before here about a year ago. And I like it a lot, also because I'll be giving a seminar on Saturday that's called You versus the Mind. So it's kind of like an expansive version of this. So the enemy within, becoming aware of the enemy and making it our friend. That's what I titled this presentation. Who has an enemy within? Okay, good. I'm not alone. For those of you who didn't raise their hands, I know you might have done it internally. It's okay. So the main goal of this class is to walk out with a better understanding as to who this enemy is and why is it our enemy. Sometimes when you have communication breakdowns, you see conflicts all over the world, and people have animosity towards a specific group, a specific person, whatever it is. And this also comes down to the point of lacking an understanding of why they see themselves as their enemies. So if you understand, actually there's a common saying, keep your friends close but your enemies closer. And it's no different than this enemy that's within us. And so actually I'm going to kind of take a turn here before we start. Although I don't like this term very much, there's a term called conspiracy theory. Has anyone heard of it? Yeah? Who has an idea? Does anyone have any conspiracy theories they want to share? It's okay, it's an open room. Yeah, Sid. Bigfoot. Okay, there's a massive Bigfoot, hairy, 12 feet tall?
Humanoid.
Okay, humanoid being that roams about the earth.
I've seen him.
He's seen him.
Yeah.
Do you believe in Bigfoot?
I do.
He does. Who doesn't believe in Bigfoot? Why?
I don't know, it doesn't make sense to me.
Doesn't make sense.
Where's he hiding?
But he's seen it. He's seen him. I'm just joking. Anything else? Any other ideas? Yeah? The earth is flat. That's a common one these days. Do you believe it? No? Anyone? Yeah?
I don't know if it's specific. It was an inside job.
Huh?
It was an inside job.
Oh, it was an inside job here in New York City. 2001, September 11th. Yeah. A lot of people actually say, there's a terrorist attack that happened here in 2011, for those of you, all of you probably know. And later on, science actually came to show that also jet fuel can't melt steel beams. Many people started to question a lot of things about the fall of the Twin Towers. How did they come down? What happened to Building 7? We can go down the rabbit hole another day. Mother Kataruchi?
Hi, thank you. Muni. By the way, it was 2001. You just said 2011. First you said 21, but it was 20 years ago now, as we know, the 911 thing. Anyway.
Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
that's okay. Sometimes they say the difference between truth and conspiracy theories are between 6 to 10 months.
That's funny. Yeah. Okay, one more. Who has a good one? It better be a good one. Let's hear it.
The extraterrestrials, like
Extraterrestrials. Yeah, so there's beings that exist in different planetary systems that live amongst us. You believe it?
Yes.
Who doesn't believe it? Many believe it. That's great.
I mean, They already, in Mexico, the Mexican president already unveiled what they have already studied, that they've found, like archaeologists found like,
Okay.
remains of like actual aliens.
How do you know that archaeology is real?
Well, based off found evidence, like physical evidence that people claim to be real. I mean, I guess
Yeah.
it could be faked, but
Right.
there's a limit. I mean, but people, there's enough evidence where there's enough witnesses. Like, there's many situations where there's enough witnesses to that they could say, yes, this is in fact real.
Yeah.
Not everything is a lie. You know,
Yeah.
like was water a lie?
Yeah.
You can't lie about whether water is real or not. You know.
Yeah. Is it? So
Maybe
okay.
it's all in our heads. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So the reason why I'm doing this is because we might not actually know as much as we think about the external world that's going on. Especially for me, before I took up this practice very seriously, I was very into those things because I wanted to understand truth. I wanted to understand what is reality. And ever since I was a child, I had the capability to kind of see through when people were lying to me. And I really noticed it when I found out Santa wasn't real. And yeah, devastating, right? And I remember I was speaking to my parents, and someone instilled a doubt that Santa didn't exist as my friend. And he knew it, so he was like, Santa's not real, you know, like how stupid can you be? You're still just a child. And I was like, no, he's gotta be real, he has to be real. And then I asked my parents, and they said, of course, yeah, of course. And I just thought, okay, yeah, it's up, the jig's up, you know. I have to change my view of reality now. So we see that not only is this external world always changing, but our view on it is always changing as well. Our perception of this external world, how it's happening, what's going on, based on the things that we're receiving through our mind and our senses, it's changing continuously. So anything actually could possibly be happening. But in our ancient scriptures, especially a booklet called the Bhagavad Gita, everyone know the Bhagavad Gita? Familiar with it? Okay, wonderful. So the Gita says we shouldn't work so hard to try and understand and control this external world. Because in reality, how much control do we have over these things that are going on outside of us? Very little. So much of our lives, however, at least in today's society, is based on trying to control these external things that are happening. Whether it's a political movement, a social movement, a religious movement, whatever it is. People are trying to control the external things that are happening in the world. And you see some things come up for a couple of years and then they go away. And then maybe they resurface for a couple of years and then they go away again. So there's actually, there's so many conspiracies that are going on in the outside world. So many that we can sit here for hours talking about them. Corruption, you know, child trafficking, you name it, all the terrors of the world we can think of. But in the Gita, Krishna is saying that we should focus more on not the external world, but the inner world. Yeah. This is the thing that we actually have control over. And it's actually very empowering, because that means that no one else is responsible for your inner world but yourself. No one can take it away from you unless you allow that to happen. Yeah? Make sense? Anyone have some ideas? What can we control in this inner world that we have?
How we see things.
How we see things. Yeah, this is a very important one. Perception. Some people say that actually problems don't exist, but the situation that we're placed in, the way that we view them, is actually the problem in itself. Or the way we're viewing something, the way we're seeing something. Anything else?
What we say.
What we say, yeah, that's an important one. Has anyone said the wrong thing before? Yeah. How bad does it feel when you say the wrong thing? So just like there's a lot of external conspiracies going on, there's also internal conspiracies that are going on. And Krishna explains how actually this conspiracy within us can actually lead down the totally wrong path. Does anyone have any idea of what this is? At least who the conspirer is?
It's us.
Us, yeah? You sure? Your mind. That was what I was looking for. Are you the mind?
No.
No. So the mind is the conspirer. And the conspiracy is that you are actually the body. This is who I am. These are my things. An I, me, and mine type of idea. Right? So here, Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita actually shares the science of understanding the self. What the mind does is it naturally has a tendency to enjoy the senses. The senses are ways that we take in things. Something that we taste. It tastes really good, like ice cream. Something that smells really good. Anyone have a favorite smell?
Orange.
Oh,
citrus,
I love citrus.
Orange, mandarin, orange.
Yeah, citrus is one of my orange smells is one of my favorite scents.
Rose.
Rose, nice.
Chevron.
Yeah, saffron. Wow. Gardenias. Wow. So many nice scents, no? So the mind takes in different ideas and it takes in different sensory things through the senses, and it labels on what we like and what we don't like. Okay? That's actually not necessarily a problem. But the problem comes when we allow the mind to make its own choices. So Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita gives us a nice understanding of who we are and how to actually control these things that are surrounding us. So I forgive me, I'm very artistically challenged. So I just did this. I hope it's understandable. So in the Gita, there's actually a science of understanding who we are. It's not just some broad thing that you blindly trust. It's something that you actually can study, you can observe it, you can live it, experience it, and then also you can share it with others. So first, we have this red part, which is the gross body, okay? So the gross body is made up of physical elements, okay? In our ancient Sanskrit text, it says that there's five elements that compose the body, okay? 5 physical elements. There's, anyone have an idea? Earth, okay? Water, fire, air, and ether. Yeah. Anyone know what ether is? Space, yeah. Ether is like, space is nice. Yeah. It's like what holds everything. Yeah. So this is our physical body, this machine. Okay? And then within that machine, there's also certain engines that are running. Okay? And that's the subtle body. So here we have the subtle body. We have the mind, the intelligence, and the ego. Okay, so these are actually elements. For me, I thought that was so amazing when I first was studying these scriptures, because it's so difficult sometimes to decipher the difference between what is me and what is my mind. Like what, Anyone else have an idea of thinking? I mean, I always think about that all the time. Welcome, Hi Krishna. So, the subtle body has 3 elements. And these elements are actually, you're able to observe them, okay? And so this subtle body is actually what carries us, who we are. Anyone, you've heard of reincarnation, no? Everyone knows reincarnation. So when the physical body deteriorates, based on our consciousness, we take another form. And that subtle body, what the mind is perceiving, the consciousness that's going into the mind, carries us into the next body, okay? So this is our little science class for the day, our little spiritual science class, okay? And then there's us. And I put a happy face there because we're individual souls. We're actually personalities. And that's a very important thing to remember, okay? So the subtle body is mainly what we're going to be discussing, most specifically the mind. As I said, this is kind of like a condensed version of the seminar I'm giving on Saturday. So if you find this interesting, please come on Saturday. I have a lot of fun doing this. And also, I hope you know I'm doing this for myself as well. I'm not, kind of just sitting here like, I know everything and I'm teaching you and you're going to listen to everything I say. But actually, this is something that's beneficial for me as well. It's a reminder. So I really like doing these things. So the subtle body and the basis is where these emotions, these feelings, these thoughts, these desires arise, okay? It's kind of like the mind, in a sense, is kind of like a browser, right? Imagine if you checked the browsing history of your mind. What would you see? Sounds terrible.
Universes of like all kinds of
Universes of things, right? So the mind can also experience pop-ups, can experience viruses, experience all these different things that come and contaminate the effectiveness of the browser, okay? So the gross body is kind of like the vehicle to execute things. The subtle body is like the means by which the vehicle can properly operate. So like the software. And then the soul is like the operator. We're like the controller of the body. So why is it actually important to understand these things? There's been, for hundreds and thousands of years, scientists, philosophers, theologians, they've all been trying to understand what the self is. Who am I? What a question that we get to ask ourselves. Who am I? You have someone like Descartes who said, I think, therefore I am. So he was kind of catching on that there was more than just this physical body. He was experiencing feelings and thoughts and emotions that differed from other physical bodies. And so he was saying, okay, I'm something beyond this physical realm. Okay? So he kind of made it to the subtle body understanding. And then we also have someone like Socrates. Anyone know his famous words? Socrates once said, catch me if you can. This was a time when he was a very revolutionary philosopher, and of course, revolutionaries usually don't get very much appreciated when they're actually in their body. Usually it's after they leave when they get appreciated most. This was at a time when he was very controversial, because he was talking about the individuality of the soul, how the soul exists. And this was something that wasn't really in the agenda of the government at the time. And so they poisoned him. They made him drink poison. And before he drank the poison, he said, catch me if you can. Because he knew that this body wasn't who he was. He knew he was going to live on. Okay? So Socrates had an idea. He didn't really have a strong conception of the soul, but he knew that there was something within him, that who he was, that wasn't bound by some temporary body and mind. Okay? And then in the Gita, Lord Krishna actually goes beyond all these things. And he definitively says that we are an Atma, a soul, an individual particle of consciousness. And that we're actually using the mind. Okay, this mind is like an interface in which we can actually utilize this physical body for a temporary amount of time. Okay, so as I said, the gross body is like the physical machinery of a computer. The subtle body is like the software. Okay? And the soul is like the operator. It's us who's controlling it. So this is a nice analogy. Does this make sense so far? Interesting?
No, wait, so
Yeah?
So when you reincarnate, the soul and then the subtle body, those are like two separate bodies and they just migrate into a new body
Correct.
together?
Yeah.
Two separate packages.
They come together, but you're not actually the subtle body. But the subtle body is like the interface in this material world. That makes sense? So it's what will carry, it's been actually, your mind has been your companion since time immemorial. Well, enemy or companion.
So how come when you reincarnate, how is it that you don't remember like stuff from before?
It's a wonderful question. We could talk for a really long time about that, I guess I can give a vague answer, a short answer, and say that sometimes even when you're in the womb of the mother, you even remember your past births and lives sometimes. But the actual process of being born is actually very intense. And it's said that when you go through something like that, actually even I studied psychology in college, even in psychology, it says sometimes when you go through a really traumatic experience, there's something called the repression. And it's just like automatic and you forget what happened because you're so bewildered by the material world. So we can talk more about that. It's definitely something we can discuss further, but it would take quite a long time to explain the whole process. But that's the basic. Does that help? Okay. Everyone good so far? Okay. I like this stuff. I like the mind. I like looking at it and kind of trying to see it in different angles so I can understand it more. So this is a, yeah?
I think, Haribo, I think what will also help to remember is as soon as we come out of our mother's womb, we enter into Maya. So this world, as soon as the soul is touched by Maya exiting the womb, it forgets everything also. So that's like the main.
So for the newer people here that might not know what that means,
illusion.
It's Maya refers to like that which is not. And so this material world is actually, it's not illusory in the fact that it doesn't exist, but it's illusory because it's temporary. So the nature of the soul is three things. It's Sat, Chit, and Ananda. It's eternal, it's full of knowledge, of consciousness, and it's full of bliss, full of happiness. Okay? So, yeah, it's very bewildering coming back out into the material world. There's so many things that are going on in your senses. Have you ever walked down the street in New York on a Saturday night in Times Square and you get home and you're just whoa. Totally subtly drained, There's so much going on, so much sensory things happening. So this is an analogy that's used in one of our literatures called the Katha Upanishad. And it's actually spoken in one of the purports of the Bhagavad Gita by our teacher, Srila Prabhupada. And so this is a really nice analogy because it helps us for me, I like labeling things and being able to actually see the differentiation of different aspects of the body, of elements of the subtle body. So these horses are like the five senses, okay? Everyone know the five senses that we have? Eating, or tasting, smelling, seeing, hearing, touching. Okay, did I miss one?
Sixth sense.
That's it. Yeah. So these are the five main senses that we have, okay? Some have a sixth sense. Everyone has more senses, but a special sixth sense. So these senses are, as we were talking about, what we kind of see, what we take in, okay? And this chariot here is like the body that we're in, okay? These reins, see the reins? Everyone can see this nicely? The reins are like the mind, okay? So the mind's directly linked with the senses. So what happens if the senses go rampant, then the mind also goes crazy. They can't control them. So what actually controls that? What keeps the senses, the senses in line? That's the charioteer. And as I said, there's three elements, right, of the subtle body. So this is here the intelligence. The intelligence is actually the element of the subtle body which actually is able to decipher not only what is good and bad in terms of what's pleasing to the senses, but what is actually good or bad for you in general. So what's your favorite food? Paneer. Okay, paneer is really nice whole milk cheese, freshly made. It's usually made with a bunch of vegetables. And so let's say you had 3 bowls of paneer vegetable stew or sabji or whatever, and you wanted a 4th one, but you were so full. And your intelligence says, no, this is when you stop. Your mind is saying, get another plate. Right? But your intelligence is saying, no, don't do this. Okay? So it's the ability to decipher. So the intelligence utilizes the mind to rein in the senses. Okay? And then we have us, who's actually commanding the charioteer, right? So we're actually in control. But unfortunately, sometimes the charioteer literally has a mind of its own. So the mind is kind of like, as I'll say in my seminar, it's like a monkey. Okay? We learn to tame the monkey, but the monkey sometimes just runs rampant. Okay? But if you learn to tame this monkey, then actually you'll experience so many things be of benefit to you. We see that people can have a broken arm. They could have, let's think of, actually we can think of this example. Who has a cracked phone? Chaitanyananda in the back has a cracked phone. Or like a faulty battery or a camera that doesn't work very nice. So we still can actually utilize the phone with a cracked screen, or a little bit of a faulty battery, or the screen is all like discolored or whatever. All the things we have to deal with in this modern world. But when the internal software isn't functioning, you can't use it. It's not possible. So the ability to actually learn to rein in the mind, to control this software, is so crucial for our happiness in our life. Otherwise, everything material could bring you all the happiness you wanted. Right? But unfortunately, we see that that's not the case at all. Actually, there was a study, and when I was in college, I was reading a study that talked about the most consumptions of sleeping pills, and 80% of the consumers were extremely wealthy. So it's like, wow, okay. They're making all this money, they're working so hard, but yet they still can't sleep at night. Why? Anyone have an idea? The mind. The mind's not being controlled. So controlling this mind it's a crucial part in the yoga process. Very crucial part. And this path, we're all individual souls that are within this body, and we're trying to further ourselves on this journey. But in order to actually properly grow in that journey, we need the software to be functioning nicely. Okay? Should be loading. Let's see. Okay, there we go. Anyone heard this before? Yeah? What do you think of it? Yeah? Agree? What does it mean to you?
We agree or disagree with what we're seeing, with what's happening around us, and in certain moments we anchor ourselves in this means the following, and yes, it is happening, even when some other people might not perceiving the same.
Perception. Going back to the same thing of perception. Any other thoughts?
I think also creating our own reality.
Nice. Creating your own reality.
Yeah, or taking the same reality versus looking at it with optimism or looking at it as a pessimist.
Back into the perception. Olga, you had your hand raised in the back.
I think it means that everything depends on your own attitude towards something.
Yeah. Everyone knows who George Harrison is, no? For those who don't, George Harrison was a very famous musician. He was the guitarist for the Beatles. And actually he had a very fond liking to the chanting of this mantra. As a matter of fact, one of his top hits of all time, half the song was singing this mantra. Yeah? So what they realized, George Harrison, what he also realized was that they had everything in the world, but they were so unhappy. And so they ended up journeying to India on a quest for realization, for happiness. And they ended up finding the Bhagavad Gita. They ended up hearing about this mantra. And George Harrison, actually in a book called Chant and Be Happy, if anyone would like to check it out, you're welcome to come and see me afterwards. But he talks about his experiences in chanting and the process of how crazy the mind is and how eventually you actually learn to go like, you kind of like break through the mind and you have amazing, amazing experiences. So one thing I thought of in this too is fear. It's like when I was a kid, I was really afraid of spiders, really afraid, terrified. But it only happened at a point when I saw a spider crawling on me, and then I think it was my mom or my brother, and I go, oh my God, I'm supposed to be scared of this thing. Okay, so now I'm terrified, and I freaked out and flicked it off me and ran away, like a little kid crying. But this is what happens. Fear is learned, okay? Even in psychology and material psychology, it talks about how fear in the mind, it is learned based on our experiences. So, actually, surprisingly, a lot of our physical problems can also stem from certain unbalanced mental states, okay? Like sometimes if you go to the doctor and you have a heart problem, they'll actually first ask you, how much are you sleeping? How much are you working? What is your anxiety levels like? What are you thinking about on a daily basis? So even in modern science, they're somehow connecting the fact that these physical things can manifest from the subtle body. So the mind is so powerful. So powerful. People say mind over matter, yeah? You can see people, they do so many crazy things because they have a disciplined mind. What's that guy's name? David Goggins. Anyone know who he is? He was like he's an ex-Navy SEAL. And the guy just does these like crazy workouts. He'll run for like hundreds of miles, And his thing is like, it's making the mind it's like, kind of like subduing the mind. You have to learn to control it and subdue it like a rampant dog or like a monkey, So I really like that. It's intense, but I really like it. So back to what we're saying, yes, the mind creates reality because it's as we said, it's the interface for us understanding this whole crazy world that we're living in. Yeah? But the thing is too, that it can also translate reality. So first, how does it create reality? Okay, we kind of spoke about it, but everything, we have, for example, our thoughts, okay? So these thoughts lead to an action. Okay? This action repeatedly going on forms our habits. Okay? And through these habits, naturally they generally form our character. And then our character comes to actually shape our destiny, our providence. Okay? Make sense? So whatever we're thinking of, it leads us to act. It's like that thing of thinking, feeling, willing, and doing. Okay? And so through those actions, when that thought process continues, those actions repeat and your habits come created. And through those habits, that shapes actually more of who you are by what you're doing, what you like to do, what your hobbies are. Okay? What are you reading? What are you watching? What are you listening to? What are you eating? All these things. And through those actions shaping our character, that helps form our destiny. This human form of life is about actually shaping that destiny into a pure, spiritual, loving experience. Because that's actually what the nature is for the soul. So we're looking for this amazing, eternal, loving experience at things that don't last forever. And the conspirer doing that is our own mind, telling us, this is what you want. This is because it's then you're getting mixed up. You're identifying, who am I? Am I the body? Am I the mind? And the mind's going, yes, get another bowl of ice cream. Or yes, yell at that person because they're making you really angry. Certain things like that. But I like doing that because it's like the mind is like sometimes like the devil on the shoulder, Do it. So the mind is a very important thing for us to understand. And unfortunately in school, we're not really taught about the mind. We're not really taught about what the nature of the mind is. What is it composed of? How does it work? You know? But these ancient literatures from India, they've known these things for thousands of years. And so it's so important to actually dive deep into things like these ancient scriptures and texts, because it can reveal to us things about us that we might not have even thought of or conceived of. Welcome. So I can, tracing back to that thing where your thoughts form your actions, actions lead to habits, habits shape your character, and character forms your destiny. Okay? Welcome. So I can definitely find points in my life where I've had a change of thoughts or a change of vision, and my entire life has changed. The course of my life, the direction where my life was going, changed based on how I was thinking. Does anyone have any other experiences like that? Yeah? Like you have, it's like in the comic books, or like comic shows or whatever, cartoons. They have like the light bulb that pops up and they have an idea and then it's like revolutionary and they make something amazing happen, So similarly, shaping these thoughts can truly shape where we want to go in our life. What do we want in our life? What is the goal of our life? Society tells you so many things. The goal of life is to enjoy. The goal of life is to become the richest person in the world. The goal of life is to be the best basketball player, to be the best monk, or whatever it is. But in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna tells us that the goal of life is to actually understand who we are as a loving, eternal spirit soul. That's our goal of life, because we're all individuals, we're all persons. And through the medium by which to understand that, we have to break through the mind. As I said, the mind is the interface connecting everything in this body. So first we said the mind creates reality. We just showed that thoughts, actions, habits, character, destiny, providence. But it can also translate reality. So since it can create the reality we wanted, it can also translate it because of our change of thoughts. So maybe first I really didn't like Ryan. Let's say I really didn't like Ryan and I had something against him. I didn't like the socks he was wearing, or I do like them, but I'm just using you as an example. I like funky socks. Funky socks are cool. And then all of a sudden, he comes up and he says a compliment to me, or he does something, and maybe my ego is stroked, or I'm saying, wow, thank you very much. You like my hat? Wow, that's very nice. And then in the mind, you're thinking, I really like this person now, right? So this is just an example, but the whole reality can be changed and translated just based on our thoughts, just based on what we're thinking, right? Amazing to think about. So the greatest conspirer and enemy in our life is the one within, okay? Our mind. Just like I said, the mind is like a browser. You have many pop-ups, no? And you're like, I don't want this. Maybe you're reading something like a newspaper article or something and you have this pop-up and you can't find like the X bar in the top of the corner, and so you're like sitting there staring at it and you don't want it to be there and it's just staying right in front of your face and you can't get it away. Yeah? Anyone have that with their own thoughts? Don't tell me I'm alone. Yeah? Okay, good. Yeah. The mind, it can put so many crazy things. And through the process of spiritual practice, the process of chanting, we actually learn to conquer the mind. Because as I said, we're not the mind, we're not the body, we're the driver of this vehicle, right? So that means that we have the capability of coming in control of this vehicle. Okay? So this is actually the greatest conspiracy that's going on. Not 9/11, not, aliens or Illuminati or whatever it is. These are interesting subjects, sure. But the real conspiracy that we all have to start taking responsibility for is the one that we can control. And that's the one that's going on within us. Yeah? And you'll be so surprised by what happens when you learn to control your inner world, how much you're able to control your response to the external world. Let's say I'm very agitated one day because Ryan stole my bowl of ice cream. I'm so sorry. It's because I like him a lot, so I'm using him as an example because I know he's a good sport. If someone comes up to me and I'm upset, how am I going to react? If they say something that upsets me more, if they do something I don't like. But if Ryan came up to me and gave me a big bowl of ice cream, and someone came up and did the same thing, maybe hit me or spilled the water on me, how would I react? So similarly, in the internal world that we have going on, there's a lot of things that are coming and going. And when we learn to control and ignore certain things and pay more attention to other things that are going on in the internal world, then the things that are happening to us externally, they don't bother us as much. You see sometimes these amazing yogis and monks, they have crazy things happen to them. I mean, totally like things you could never imagine, like losing their legs or having cancer at a young age or whatever it is. And they're so chill. They're so content. Why? Because their mind is controlled. They're seeing things clearly. The mind is disciplined. So through a disciplined mind, we can actually achieve that happiness, that love, that knowledge that the soul's naturally longing for. It's our nature to want these things. No one wants to die, and no one wants to, be stupid. No one wants to be unhappy, right? And this is the three natures of the soul, as we said earlier. Sat, Chit, and Ananda. Eternal, full of knowledge, and full of bliss. But the problem is we're looking for it in the wrong place. Yeah? So through the process of meditation, through the process of studying these ancient scriptures, through the process of associating with saintly people like Hadai, Pran, and Tulsi, through associating with these people that are so advanced, you actually, you experience those things. It rubs off on you. And then you tap more into the place where you're actually going to get what you're looking for. So, naturally the mind has 4 types of thoughts, okay? Uncontrolled. There's positive thoughts, which are, positive ideas about others, our environment, our position, right? There's negative thoughts. There's thinking bad about other people, thinking bad about our life, about our environment, our situation, what's happening to us. And then there's functional thoughts, okay? So we have positive, we have negative, and now we have functional, which are like useful thoughts, things that we can do on a daily basis, okay? Beneficial thoughts for us in whatever we're doing. Like, I should probably take the trash out today. Thought like that. And then there's waste thoughts, like a useless thought. So maybe, you're meditating and you're chanting and you're trying to be fixed on what you're doing, and then all of a sudden the mind says, what was that song that we listened to for like 8 straight months 5 years ago? I've just been thinking about it so much and I can't remember the name of it, right? It's like something like that. So those are like waste thoughts, okay? So through the process of meditation, you learn to shape more of your thoughts into positive and functional thoughts. These positive and functional thoughts are ones that lead us towards the path of spiritual life, that lead us towards a path of enlightenment, of happiness, of joy, of knowledge, right? Of love. There's a famous verse in the Bhagavad Gita, and when I read this, I was so blown away because through studying the Bhagavad Gita, I learned more about psychology than I did in my years of studying in college. I mean that. I'm totally serious when I say that, okay? For him who has conquered the mind is the best of friends. But for one who has failed to do so, his mind will remain the greatest enemy. So the problem is we've been living with an enemy for so long. Most of us don't even know it. On a daily basis, it's happening all the time. The mind is choosing what it wants to do and we're kind of being driven by it. So a lot of this process of yoga, of spiritual practices, is to learn to actually turn that mind in a way that we can control it. That's actually its natural position. But you have to train it. You have to, you have to condition it in a sense. In a spiritual way. So, what's the solution here? Krishna says that to control the mind, and Arjuna, who's his friend who he's speaking to, is saying, this sounds impossible. He says the mind is more difficult to control than the blowing of the wind. Who could even think of controlling the wind? And so Krishna actually responds saying two things. He says, yes, Arjuna, you're very right. And then he's, probably sitting there like, I'm right? I thought you were going to help me, And then Krishna says, no. Through steady practice and detachment, through determination and detachment, one can actually learn to control the mind. So it takes discipline, just like anything in our life. I mean, take Kobe Bryant. Anyone know who Kobe Bryant is? Professional basketball player, used to play. He would do the most fundamental, basic principles every day. But he was like arguably the best player in the world. Because he was arguably, sitting over there like, I don't know, I wouldn't argue it, but some would. Yeah? So simply through a daily steady practice, even just doing the basics, it helps shape you so much, especially in your spiritual life. As I said, we're struggling with the mind continuously, so you have to, it's like lifting weights. You just have to go. You have to go to the gym, So same thing in spiritual life. You have to go to the gym. And that gym is an internal gym. It's the internal world, yeah? So taking up a daily spiritual practice teaches us to learn how to control the mind, to actually learn how to decipher the thoughts of the mind and find which ones we can actually pay attention to. The mind pops up, it catches us on many things. The mind can take you on a river that goes miles and miles away from where you wanted to go. But when you learn to ignore some things through the process of meditation, through chanting, this chanting actually allows you to focus on the things that are beneficial for you. As I said, the positive and the functional thoughts, not the negative and the waste thoughts, okay? So we have daily practice and we have detachment. This is very important because maybe my mind is saying, I don't like Sid's glasses. But that's not actually me thinking that. This is my mind just giving some weird random thought and it wants to label something. It's feeling agitated and it wants to do something. It's like a monkey. It wants to run rampant. Yeah? So we have to learn to neglect and ignore the mind in times. And this is very important because then you'll find when you learn to neglect those things that aren't beneficial for you, your external responses will change a lot. And people will notice it. I promise you.
It's almost like AI.
Like AI.
Putting like previous data together.
Yeah.
Like make sense of it.
Yeah, that's kind of how they formed it in the first place. They're trying to mirror consciousness. So it's explained in this day and age that the only practice to actually overcome the crazy mind of ours is actually taking to the chanting of mantras. So in different ages, there's different forms of meditation that are known as best, based on the consciousness of the general human society. And in this age, it's actually said that through the chanting of mantras, or the name of Krishna, the names of God, we actually learn to break through the mind, control the mind, and actually attain self-realization. Who am I? Who actually am I? So a mantra is a vibration that helps us free the mind. Or in a sense, it helps us become free from the mind. Man means mind. Cha means to like uplift or to deliver. You could say in one sense you're delivering the mind like spiritual food through chanting. You can think about that when you're chanting. You're offering the mind something. The mind's saying a bunch of things. Here, take this. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Hare Ram. And you'll see them. The mind will eventually. It's like a baby. Sometimes the baby doesn't want to eat. Like the spoon's going like, and he's like humming and he's whining, and then he eats it and he. Okay, I want more. Okay, I'll listen. You'll see it practically, but you have to practice, right? And you have to be detached from the things that the mind tries to fight at you. So chanting daily, as I'm saying, is absolutely vital, okay? Because all of our problems begin with an uncontrolled mind. All of your problems. Whatever's happening to you in your life, whatever is going on with you, I'm not trying to show a lack of compassion. I'm sure all of us have gone through many different things in our lives or currently are going through things. But I'm actually empowering you. I'm giving you the chance to see that you have the capability to control your life. You have the responsibility to see how you're perceiving the situation. That's the problem. How we're perceiving a situation is actually our problem or our benefit, our solution. Okay? So, one last thing, I'll wrap this up. When we chant this Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we can become three things. Okay? Peaceful, powerful, and beautiful. Okay? It's like the spiritual version of CoverGirl. So, first thing is peaceful, okay? Through the process of spiritual practice, we learn to broaden our perspective. We deepen our consciousness, okay? When that perspective is broadened, that consciousness is deeper, you don't become as if impacted by things. Yeah? So, Olga, let's say I give you a glass of water, and I take a whole cup of salt, and I dump it in the water. Would you taste the salt? Yeah. What if we filled this entire floor with water? And I put the same amount, like the entire floor, like think about the restaurant, think about the room over there, think about the kitchen all the way in the back. You can start to try and imagine. And I put the same cup of water in. Would you taste the salt? No. So the same thing with our mind. We have to actually learn to flood our mind with a deeper spiritual consciousness. There's an example that's used when you have ink in a bottle. Okay? When you try to dump all the ink out in the bottle, it doesn't all come out. But when you pour something denser, they use the example of milk. The milk actually floods out all the ink because the milk is denser. Yeah? So this practice, sometimes we think yoga as subtracting, as minus, as getting rid of things. Spiritual life is getting rid of things, subtracting things. But actually, yoga is adding. Because through the process of adding this chanting process, you're actually flooding out all of these other things in your mind that are causing you problems. And then what happens? Your thoughts change. Your perspective changes because your thoughts are actually becoming more clear. It's becoming spiritualized. Because you're focusing on something that's spiritual, right? Our thoughts become our actions become our habits become our, anyone remember? Character, and character shapes our destiny. Okay, peaceful, got that, yeah? Then you have powerful. Through the process of chanting, you're sharpening your consciousness. There's a famous story, I'm sure you've heard me tell this before, some of you, but I really like this story. And it's a man who just started a job being a lumberjack, yeah? And so he shows up for the first day, he says, I'm going to cut down more trees than everyone. And he does. He cuts down like 18 trees. In one day, that's a lot of trees. So he comes back the next day, he says, I'm going to cut down even more trees. And then he cuts down 17. And then he comes the next day, and he says, I'm going to cut down even more trees. I don't care how hard I have to work. But he only cuts down 13 trees. And so the next day he says, okay, this is it. I'm going to work the hardest I've ever worked, I could ever think of. But I don't care. Anyways, like, I don't know, whatever his thought process is. I don't care what goes on. I want my boss to approve of me, whatever it is. He works super hard, harder and harder and harder. He even works overtime. How many trees does he cut down? He only cut down 12. So he's so fried out. He's so done. He's like, I'm working harder and harder every day, and I'm cutting down less and less trees, so I'm going to go quit the job. I'm going to talk to my boss. He goes and talks to the boss. Boss is saying, you just started 4 days ago. And he said, but I'm working harder and harder every day. You see me, and I'm cutting down less trees. So they run through the whole list. How are you holding the axe? You know, how are you turning your arms? You know, are you taking breaks? Are you drinking water? They go through the whole list, and then finally, he says yes to all of them. He's doing everything properly. And then he says, are you sharpening your axe? He says, no, I don't have time for that. I have to cut down all these trees. I can't sharpen my axe. I don't have time. Right? So you have to make time for things like this. Because what happens is, when you dedicate time every day to chanting this, I promise you, you will become sharp. And the more and more you chant, the sharper and sharper you become. And you will be so efficient in whatever you do. People will actually see it. They'll notice it in you. And this leads to my next thing, beautiful. I'm not saying that this mantra is going to like decorate you with like, you know, mascara, or, you know, it's going to like give you the perfect curls in your hair, or give you like the perfect biceps, or, you know, whatever it is. No, this is a different type of beauty. This is the real beauty. It's actually said in Sanskrit, it said, Cheto Darpana Marjanam. This process of chanting, it cleanses the mirror of the heart. Really beautiful thing to meditate on. And when that heart becomes more and more clean, then the more nature of who you actually are is actually coming out. And people can actually see it. I've had many times where we're in the subways in a really dark place, or even outside in a super sunny day, and we're chanting, and people have come up to us and they're like so bewildered. I don't know what it is, but there's like this weird light that's coming like from everyone here, but I can't actually see the light. It's like I can feel it. It's like people have come up to me and shared these weird experiences that they've had, you know? And it's because all of us we're at least trying to clean the stuff out of our heart. And that it shows. There's a story actually about Lord Ram, okay, who's an avatar of God, of Krishna. And there was a time in his kingdom, there was someone who banished him from the kingdom. And she was very beautiful. She was very aristocratic. She was married to the king. Everyone respected her. But when her consciousness changed and she became greedy and envious and she banned Lord Ram for the kingdom, everyone disliked her. She was beautiful, intelligent, humorous, whatever good qualities you can think of. But that internal consciousness was dirty. And so people were very unattracted. So that real beauty will emanate internally, outwards. Don't try to cover this, because people have the capabilities to see through it, even if they're not even conscious of it. Subconsciously, they'll have the capabilities to see through it. Society tells you to cover things up. Cover the dirt in your heart, cover everything, just make the externals look nice. We say no. This isn't what's going to help you. You focus on the internal world first, and when you have that nice and clean, then you start focusing on the external world. It's not that you can't go out and carry your duties every day. Everyone has, I'm sure, a job. Everyone's a student or doing something, right? So this process, becoming peaceful, powerful, and beautiful, you're able to utilize that consciousness that you're sharpening. You're becoming more peaceful by and actually radiating this to other people. You can work in the real world doing these things. So my request to you is to just try it. You've already tried it in the beginning. and we're going to start to do it again with the kirtan. But this is my request of you. Just try chanting. I'm not telling you to believe me. I'm not telling you to do anything else. Just be like a spiritual scientist. Do an experiment. And then you can observe the results yourself. So we're running. Do we have time for a comment or a question? If anyone has any questions or comments, thank you for your kind attention. Hope it was okay and beneficial for all of you. Yeah? What was your name?
Lamont.
Huh?
Lamont.
Lamont.
Hey, what's your name?
My name's Narada. Yeah.
Have you observed someone, or do you believe it's possible to maintain control of your mind and your state of being 100% of the time to achieve that?
Yes. But it's not that necessarily we control the mind. Like, the way we control the mind is we learn what to take from it. Because, as I said, the mind is like a monkey. Like, it's just going to do things, you know? Like, sometimes you just have stupid thoughts that you just, like, can't control, right? So, beginning on that basis, the process of controlling the mind is to learn to become detached from the things in the mind that don't serve us. But actually, when you come to a super high elevated platform, that mind becomes totally spiritualized. It's actually said that, in one sense, that the mind, like the material mind, dissolves. And your spiritual mind, from who you actually are, is actually manifesting. And so that's why, like, tradition in Vedic culture in India, it's common to touch, things, to hold things from very purified saints, because everything in their body is like very pure consciousness, right? So yes, it's possible, and I've seen, by my fortune, I've had the association of great people that have come to that platform. So yes, it's 100% possible. Great question. So you have hope, like me. We can hope together. Abigail?
When we've conquered our mind, will the mind still pass judgment and try to label?
Depends on the level of conquering we have. But as I said, when the mind becomes totally spiritualized, that tendency to judge doesn't come up. But even in the process of the mind coming up to do something, to think of something, to want to say something, because in this age, the consciousness of everyone is a little lower than general. The mind's naturally going to think things like, Ryan's socks, I just can't stand them, But the purpose is for us to actually become detached from those things. And that's actually also conquering the mind. It's like sometimes someone keeps yapping in your ear and they're wanting to get a response from you. But the best thing to do is to not do anything at all. Like a barking dog or something. And it just goes away. Does that make sense? Learning to ignore those things. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and that chanting helps you ignore that. Otherwise, the mind just does its own thing.
Definitely having to do with conquering your mind. I guess just a reflection that I got from this was the past few weeks was just like looking up budgeting, saving money, things like that, like very material things that everybody has to do and things like that. And one of the things that somebody said was, it's not your fault that you're here, as in like in this world, but it is your responsibility. And then I think similarly, it's your job to control yourself, and if you want to give yourself any fighting chance of doing anything, even, spiritually, like materially too, it should become a part of your life, I haven't chanted in 2 weeks and I've been insufferable, so it's like, you can go up and down, and you can definitely feel when you're more grounded, and you can definitely feel a difference when you're not,
Yeah, feeling, that's so important.
Yeah.
And it's empowering, that you're in control of it. That means no one can take it away from you. No one can take this away from you. you have the ability to actually come to the most amazing, adventurous thing, which is called spiritual life. And no one can take it away from you. So yeah, it's very important learning to take that responsibility. Empowering, actually.
Just piggybacking first on that word responsibility is a response to abilities. That's what you said. But before the quote you had with George Harrison, and congrats on the tribute. The temple's going to happen again for on the 24th. It was great in January 2019 of that. But I thought when you asked us what did we think that it meant, all in the mind. So what's going on a lot in the world, ups and downs, including wars and everything like that. It's like people. It's like like a mirroring of people's minds. You know, if like people's minds are more at peace and all like that, then it makes the world more placid too.
It's said in psychology that you can read a person based on their actions, based on their behavior. This is called behavioral psychology. And the process of behavioral psychology is that you can actually study how someone acts, and you can get a deep intrinsic understanding of what their thoughts are. And so a common practice of therapy is called cognitive behavioral therapy, where they watch your behavior and they try to understand your thoughts through that, and then vice versa. They understand your thoughts and see how it's impacting your behavior. And so then they try to correct both of those things. Of course, it comes down to the individual. But there's a lot going on, as I said. It's the external world. And unfortunately, we don't have much control over it. And that can be very frustrating if we don't understand what we have control over. So now I'm letting you know that you have something very important to be in control of. And this is your path. Okay? This is very important. And through this spiritual journey, you actually end up making a bigger difference in the world than you would have been if you just were focusing on the external world. Some people say, well, you're just talking about going in the end of the world to the inner world, but then what do we do after that? Well, you give it to other people. Spirituality is about targeting the root cause of the issue. These external things, these movements, these political agendas, this is all temporary. It's like a pharmaceutical company giving you some things that just dulls your symptoms for a couple months or a couple years. No, we're targeting the root cause. Okay? So I think we can finish here. Thank you once again. Everyone was so kind and attentive and tolerant of the class. I hope I said something at least that's of benefit to you, that you can take away of and apply to your life. If I've said anything that has made you offended or something like that, please forgive me. I had no intention. I'm just here to encourage everyone in their spiritual life and simultaneously encourage myself. So thank you very much. Hare Krishna.